Thank you, Rakshita. Hare Krishna, everyone. Sorry, I had a computer issue. Sorry. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming. My voice is hoarse this morning. Sorry. Okay. So let's start. Today, very nice chapter, but it needs a full attention. Chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita. So let's start. Second. ज्ञान तिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जन शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकम्। हे कृष्णा करुण सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्ते। सप्तकांचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रियै। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Okay, so what was the name of chapter 12? The name of chapter 12, please. Thank you.
Bhakti Yoga.
Nice.
Devotional service.
Bhakti Yoga. Okay, so what was the name of chapter 11?
Vishwarupa Sandarshana Yoga.
I only hear voice.
Universal form.
The universal form. Okay, and what is the name of chapter 4? Chapter 4, please.
Transcendental knowledge.
Very nice, Mataji. Okay, now everyone is going to write to me. What is the name of chapter 3? No one? Harshita, I'm audible, right?
Yes, Mataji.
Anya Mataji, Hi Krishna.
Yes, Mataji.
Very nice, Karma Yoga. What is the name of chapter 5? Chapter 5? Then we'll start. Name of chapter 5? Yes, Mataji, Pranjali. Mataji. Three and 5, same title. No, that's not correct. There is a difference. Pranjali Mataji, you can unmute yourself. I'm requesting you to. Nobody knows the name of chapter 5. Okay. Please find out. No, that's not correct. Okay, so the name of chapter 3 is Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Action in Krishna consciousness, correct. Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, or nature, the enjoyer and consciousness. So this starts the last third of Bhagavad Gita. Let's pay our obeisances to Shri Radha Govinda before we proceed. This is what we did yesterday. The first third, Krishna. The first third of 12th chapter, Arjuna asked a question to Krishna. What was the question that Arjuna asked to Krishna in chapter 12, beginning of chapter 12? What was the question? One question he asked. What is it? Yes, Mataji.
He asked whom should we worship? Whose worship is better? Impersonal Brahmin or Krishna in person?
Impersonal. Okay, thank you. Very nice. So he asked that which worship is superior? Is it the worship of the impersonal Brahma Jyoti or the personal form of Krishna, which is the two-handed form, Shamsundar form of Krishna? Krishna answered. What was the answer by Krishna? What was the answer by Krishna? Which worship is better according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Which worship is better? Nobody. I don't have any chat or Mataji, you answered, so you can write to me in the chat. People who haven't spoken anything, please raise your hand. Bhakti is perfect. Okay, and Mataji is writing me. Thank you. So, and then progressive stages of devotion, and then the qualities that endear one to Krishna. Is there anybody in this class who knows the progressive stages of devotion? What were the progressive stages, including the co-host? Progressive stages of devotion. Krishna says, you could do this. If you can't do this, then you do this. If you can't do this, then you do this. Is there anyone, anybody in this class who knows this? The progressive stages of devotion. Nobody. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead then. So Arjun asked Krishna in 13th chapter in the beginning 6 questions, and Krishna answers each question for the rest of the chapter and ends the chapter by giving him the vision of knowledge. So he asked Krishna, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetragna, what is Jnana? Then he asked, what is Gyanam? And then he asked, what is Prakriti, what is Purusha? And what is, so these are 6 questions: Kshetra, Kshetragna, Jnana, Gyanam, Prakriti, and Purusha. And then ends the chapter, which sets the ground for tomorrow's chapter. Thank you, Shruti Vahi Mataji. So far, you're right. What is it? 3 modes of material nature, 14th chapter. So the question arises that Bhagavad Gita is divided into 3 parts, right? I have been saying this: chapter 1 to 6, chapter 7 to 12, and then chapter 13 to 18. Chapter 1 to 6, Krishna explains bhakti by karma. By working, how can one become Krishna conscious? Chapter 7 to 12 is exclusively devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, the process of Bhakti Yoga itself, without karma or jnana mixed. Chapter 13 to 18, Krishna talks about jnana again. So the perfection of jnana is Bhakti Yoga. He talks about, he gives us a lot of knowledge, and at the end he says that perfection of jnana or knowledge is Bhakti Yoga. Question arises that if bhakti is the culmination, why is Gyan presented in the last 6 chapter? Why Krishna chose to present bhakti in the middle and then karma in the first third, Gyan in the last third? What makes Krishna do that? Okay, let's see. Actually, entire Bhagavad Gita is bhakti. The first 6 discuss how to achieve bhakti through work. The last 6 describe how to achieve it through knowledge. And the middle 6 is bhakti itself. You see, bhakti, the knowledge, also in chapter 12, Krishna explained how he personally delivers his devotee from birth and death. Right? Mrityu Sansara Sagarat, we studied this. So in the last 6 chapter provide the philosophical knowledge necessary to extricate oneself from the material world. So he gives information that how important it is to come out of this material world and go to the spiritual side of the existence. And then not only does he give instruction, but he also gives the process of doing it. How do you do this in the last third of chapters? Gyan has its use in assisting our detachment from Maya and our attachment to Krishna. Hence, when we use knowledge as a means to attain devotion, it becomes a part of bhakti. Okay? So when we use knowledge as a means to attain devotion, it becomes a part of bhakti. So even though the last third of Bhagavad Gita is dealing with the knowledge part, not bhakti part directly, but we need that knowledge to get to the get fully convinced about the bhakti. So Arjun asked these 6 questions, and I'm going to be asking with the hope that somebody will answer it tomorrow. What is Prakriti, Krishna? What is Purusha? What is Kshetra? What is Kshetragna? What is Jnanam? And what is Gyanam? Krishna answers, Prakriti means material nature. Purusha means enjoyer of Prakriti. Then Kshetra means field, right? Kshetra means in Hindi field, or here it refers to body, because body is a field of activities for the soul. Kshetragna means knower of the field. There are 2 knowers, one is soul and another is super soul. What is Jnanam? Understanding Kshetra and Kshetragna. Understanding these 2 elements is Jnana or knowledge. What is Gyanam? Goal of knowledge is Paramatma. So this is what happens. Arjun said, oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field, what is Kshetra, and the knower of the field, which is Kshetragna, and of knowledge, which is Gyan, and the end of knowledge, which is Gyanam. The blessed Lord then said, this body, O son of Kunti, is called as a field, and one who knows this body is called as a knower of the field. So the body that in which soul is living, Krishna calls that body as the field, and one who knows the field is called as Kshetragna. And there are two knowers. One is a soul and one is a super soul. So what is the difference between them? Krishna continues, Kshetragnam cha api mam vidhi sarveshu sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetragnor jnanam yataj jnanam matam mama. O sign of Bharat, you should understand that I'm also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its owner is called knowledge. That is my opinion. Okay, so the body is called as the Kshetra, and there are two knowers, which is Kshetragna, soul and super soul. So soul and super soul always remain the knower, whether one's consciousness is in the state of being fully awake, or whether it is in the form of dreaming, or whether it is in the form of deep sleep. Third canto Srimad Bhagavatam describes that a living entity goes through these three stages of consciousness in a day: awake, dreaming, and deep sleep. And when we are dreaming, we don't know about our body. Do we? We forget where we are sleeping because we don't remember who we are. So, and then when we go to deep sleep, we don't even know, we don't even dream. So we even leave that. But soul and super soul always remain the observer of our activities in all these stages of consciousness. So what is Kshetra? What is Kshetra so far? Which is a complicated chapter, so I do request full attention. What is Kshetra?
Body.
Very nice. And what is Kshetragna?
The knower of
Soul
the
and
body.
super soul.
How many knowers are there?
Knower of the body.
Two knowers,
Are they?
soul and super soul.
Two. Soul and super soul.
What is Jnanam?
Jnanam is
Knowledge.
knowledge of soul and super
What is knowledge?
knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragna.
To understand
Knowledge
this.
means jnana, to know him.
Is it to understand this body and its owner is called knowledge. See here, to understand this body and its owner is called knowledge. That is my opinion. Okay. So what is the difference between soul and super soul? What is the difference? Okay, the analogy is given. Let's say that there is a Kshetra or agricultural field. Okay, so that's agricultural field or Kshetra. Now there are two knowers of this field. One knower is the farmer who owns this field. That particular person knows everything about its field, or may not know every nook and corner, but knows most about it. So the thing is that this particular knower, the farmer, is limited to knowing its own field. And then there's a second knower, which knows all the fields across the planet, which is sun god. Right? Sun shines over all the fields and sees all the fields. So that is a second knower. This is an example, a comparative, not like, don't take it in a literal sense. Similarly, our body, soul is a knower, but the soul is limited to its own body. I don't know what's happening in your body. You don't know what's happening in my body. Or do we? Do we know what's happening, what we are thinking about each other all the time? We know?
No,
Do we know?
No.
Or we know about
Mataji.
ourselves. So okay. So thank you. So soul is a knower of its own body. But Krishna, the other knower, the super soul, knows all the bodies. Not only of human beings, but all living entities at the same time. So Krishna knows what's happening in my body, what's happening in your body, what's happening in every single body, in every nook and corner of the creation. So that way, there's a difference. That's a difference, basic difference between the soul being a knower of a body and the super soul being the knower of the body. Okay. So this is a very interesting explanation of text 3 that we just read, that defines Kshetra and Kshetragna. So he answers the fourth question. Kshetragna means the knower of the field, and there are two knowers, soul and super soul. Then he answers the fifth question, what is Jnanam? Understand body and its knower, soul and super soul, is called as knowledge. And knowledge, or to study the subject matter of field of activity, and the knower of field is very minutely. Kshetra is field of activity, two kinds of knowers, soul and super soul. So remember, too many times repeated now. Now, Krishna, you see, Prabhupada has said it repeatedly. International Society for Krishna Consciousness is not a society of opinions. We don't give our opinions, we give evidences, or we make our opinion based on the evidences of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Of Guru, the spiritual master, Sadhu, the saintly peoples, and Shastra, the bona fide scriptures. So we don't talk like, okay, maybe it is like that, perhaps. No, maybe and perhaps is not used in the entire bona fide scriptures, because it is perfect. There's no room for all those words to be used, because we are sure of what we are doing. So Krishna, when he's explaining this, Kshetra, Kshetragna, and Jnanam follows the same procedure just to teach us. He says this, that knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. See, he's giving evidence that it's not just me, even though Krishna himself is the Veda, or whatever he says is knowledge. But for our sake, he's giving evidence that it is described by various sages, which is saintly people, and in various Vedic writings, or the scriptures. So basically he's saying it's not just me that I'm talking to you, that Kshetra is like this, Kshetra is like this, but it is also referred to as what it is in all these things, and especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. So the cause is always present in the effect. It's a little bit like, this is more elaborated, this particular verse. Prabhupada gives a very nice purport, but it's also very nicely elaborated in a third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, 26th chapter. If you can hear Prabhupada lectures on all the, he hasn't given the lecture on all the shlokas, but all the verses, but most of them. Prabhupada explains very nicely this reasoning as to cause and effect, that cause is always present in the effect. For example, if the parents have a child, so the parents are the cause of the child, right? Right or wrong? Like, parents are the cause of the child because of the parents, in a way, right? So that means the effect, which is the cause, which are the parents, mother and father, they are present in the effect, the child. So cause is always present in the effect. Okay, but go and refer to 3.26 chapter, the whole chapter. And then Krishna explains different levels, or Prabhupada explains different levels of consciousness. This is very nice. As we grow in our spiritual existence, our consciousness evolves. And consciousness is a symptom of the soul. It's very easy. Don't get confused. Consciousness means that the soul is present in the body. That is why this body appears to be conscious. For example, if somebody pinches our back, we can feel the pain. Yes or no? We may not be able to see it, but we'll feel it.
Yes.
Yes. What makes it feel it? What makes it feel it? According to the scriptures, it is the presence of the soul which has extended its consciousness that makes it feel it. But if the body is dead, there is no soul. Okay, then we can pinch the body or do anything to the body. Will the body feel any pain?
No.
Why? It's the same thing happening. Why is it not feeling any pain?
Consciousness is not there.
Consciousness is withdrawn.
Not
Very
there.
nice. Consciousness is withdrawn. So consciousness is a symptom of the soul. And as we go more near to the soul, or super soul, or Krishna, or Paramatma, then we get more and more evolved in that consciousness. We can change it. So the lowest level of consciousness is Annamaya. Annamaya means that basically the realization of life is in the food. So one realizes the life by the presence of food. So basically what it means that I am a matter, I'm body, I need food, right? So this is like us animal consciousness. Animals are like that. They're looking for food, or just food. They're not looking anything beyond that. Or even a newborn child, they're looking for food. Of course, they're looking for and animals also look for affection, but basically it's mostly the food. So that's basically means that I'm the body, I'm the matter. As one evolves, one comes to the next level of consciousness, which is called pranamaya. Pranamaya consciousness means that I am living. There's a conception of life. You see, if there's a small newborn baby, somebody comes to harm the baby, God forbid, but if that happens, will the baby revolt? I have seen they don't, for the first few weeks of life, they don't even like have any sense of who they are. But will they revolt, like, or as compared to a 10-year-old child, will they revolt, a newborn child?
No, Mataji.
Thank you. It's because the consciousness is not evolved. So pranamaya consciousness, basically the realization is that realization of life is in the living symptoms, that I'm living. Okay, so it's better than just the food, that I'm body. So though there's something more than that, that I'm living. As one evolves more, then Gyanmaya or Manomaya. Gyanmaya or Manomaya consciousness means that one becomes aware of its subtle body. Remember in 4th chapter, we studied that we have a gross body and then we have a subtle body. Gross body is what we see, like earth, water, fire, air, ether, like what is my skin color, what is my form look like, what is the color of the eyes, what are the size of the ears, all that, like grossly we can see and perceive with our eyes. But subtle body is mind, intelligence, and false ego. We have it, but we cannot see it, but it's there. So as the consciousness evolves from the concept of just life, then the consciousness of subtle body becomes aware that I have a mind. So mind has 3 functions: thinking, feeling, and willing. So one becomes aware of that. That's called Gyanmaya. As one evolves more, one comes to understand that I am not just the mind or intelligence, I'm actually the soul. So the realization that ends in a soul is called Vigyanmaya, or consciousness, that I'm not the gross body, I am not the subtle body, but I'm the soul. But that is also not enough. Just knowing that I'm not the soul is also not enough. The highest level of consciousness is Anandmaya. Anandmaya means that the realization that I am actually part and parcel of the super soul or Krishna. So that ends in the blissful nature. Krishna is happy, I'm also happy because I'm his part and parcel. So my duty is to serve Krishna. That is the highest level of consciousness, that spiritual consciousness. So Annamaya is that basically thinking that I'm the food, the realization of life is in the food. So I'm matter. Pranamaya means that I am living. So, or I'll die. So gross body. Gyanmaya means that coming to the level that I am mind. I have a mind, which is like mind, intelligence, mind, which has 3 functions: thinking, feeling, and willing. Then as one evolves, one comes to realize that I'm actually not the body, and I'm actually not the gross or subtle body, but I'm actually the soul. So that's Vigyanmaya. But as one goes and advances to the most perfect level of consciousness, one comes to understand Anandmaya level, which is that I'm part and parcel of Krishna, and that's my constitutional position, nothing below this. So this is now Krishna is going to describe us the ingredients of gross and subtle body. Is everyone awake so far? Yes? If we can finish.
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
This chapter is a little bit. So this is the ingredients of the gross and subtle body. So 5 great elements. What are the 5 great elements? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. So 5 great elements. 6 elements: false ego, then intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, the mind, and 5 sense objects. These are 24, constitute the gross and subtle body, the ingredients of this gross and subtle body. So how are they 24? 5 is great elements. So earth, water, fire, air, ether. 6th is ego. 7th is intelligence. The unmanifested is the 3 modes of material nature, which are not yet manifested, that mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 10 senses, that becomes 19. So 10 senses are 5 working senses and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. So these are knowledge acquiring senses, which are shown on the right side: eyes, nose, ear, hand, and tongue. And 5 working senses. Can anyone tell me what are the 5 working senses? 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 10, 18. And then 19th element is the mind. and 5 sense objects, which are needed for five knowledge acquiring senses. So 19 plus 5 makes it 24. So eye has an object of vision, nose is an object of smell, ear has an object of hearing, hand is an object of touch, and tongue has an object of taste. So these total becomes 24. Can anyone tell me 5 working senses? If you can write to me or you can raise your hand. Okay, now the interaction. Desire, hatred, happiness, distress. So desire, hatred, happiness, distress is the functionality of the subtle body. Okay, I like something, I hate something. I'm happy in some situation and I'm sad in some situation. Okay, this is a subtle body. And the aggregate, the life symptoms and convictions are all considered in summary to be field of activities and its interaction. So Dr. Shashi Tiwari, you can unmute yourself. Yes. So go ahead. 5 working senses.
5 working senses are hand, feet, hastpai, upasth, and those are genitals, and hand, feet, genitals means anus, and one more is there.
Vocal cords. Vocal cords. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So nice. She's right. So hands, legs, organ of evacuation, organ of reproduction, and vocal cords that produces sound. These are 5 working senses. Okay, so all these are considered to be the field of activities and its interaction. So nice, right? No one talks like this. Have you heard anything like this before? Reading Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam? Have you heard anything like this? That this is what you're made of?
No.
So,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yes.
where did you hear it?
Yes.
Where did you hear it?
Actually, I have read these things in my philosophy subject, and
Okay.
that is philosophy of Ayurveda.
Oh, that's so nice. Okay, but then also the base will be here. The reference will be here. This is very elaborately explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd canto by Kapil Dev Muni to his mother Devahuti. This is called Sankhya Yoga, analysis. We're analyzing what am I made of. It's like, if I'm eating a dish and it's very tasty, and then I inquire from the cook, what are the ingredients? So the cook will tell me that these are the ingredients, right? So this is Krishna made this material world. Now he's telling us, what you're thinking is what you're not, but actually this is what it is. So now Krishna gave us the knowledge of what is the ingredient, what are the ingredients of gross and subtle body. Now what is he going to do? He's going to give us this 20 elements of how to extricate oneself outside of this gross and subtle body. First, he defines what is the prison of a soul, and then he gives us a process how to get out of the soul, get out of the prison, which is how to be established in the self or spiritual self. These are the 20 qualities. If one cultivates these qualities, then one can extricate oneself from the material bondage. Amanvittam, adhamvitvam, ahimsa, kshantir, arjavam, acharyopasanam, saucham, stairyam, atma vinigraha, indra artheshu, vairagyam, ahankara evacha, janma mrityu jara vyadhi, dukkha dosha nudarshanam, asaktir anabhishvanga, putra dara grihadishu, nityam cha samachittatvam, ishtani ishto papa tichu, Maicha ananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini vivikta desha sevitvam aratir jana samshadi adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartham darshanam etaj jnanam iti proktam ajnana yad ato anyatha. All this I declare to you to be the knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So what are these 20 elements? These are the 20 elements, which starts with first quality, humility, or amanvittam. Starts with that one, if one is not humble, one cannot go to the next or next or next or next quality. Okay, so what is humility according to Krishna? Not to be anxious to have satisfaction of being honored. In this material world, a conditioned soul is looking for recognition, that I have done something great in my life, so recognize me. But Krishna says that if one wants to get out of this duality of existence, then one has to become situated in Krishna consciousness. and become anxious to bring the praise or honor to Krishna rather than to oneself. That is what it means. Okay, then pridelessness is understanding you're not the body, and thus honor and dishonor are the same. Can you give me an example of a personality from the scriptures where pridelessness was exhibited and humility was exhibited in toto? Anybody who's reading Srimad Bhagavatam, can you give me an example of a personality which exhibited this quality of pridelessness? And nobody. I'm audible, right? Okay, so if you read Srimad Bhagavatam, then for fifth canto, there is a story of Jadabharat. So he exhibited pridelessness completely. On the devotees, you can take anyone's name, but Jadabharat is specifically mentioned in being prideless. Non-violence. One meaning of non-violence means that not to bother or not to kill unnecessarily the other body, but also one means that unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. Unless and until we teach each other the science of Krishna consciousness, we're leading a very violent life, according to this. Because in Isopanishad, the word is used as Atmaha, killer of the soul. Person who is not cultivating Krishna consciousness is considered, in Isopanishad, that person is considered as Atmaha, the killer of the soul. So it's violence, killing the soul. Tolerance, be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. Simplicity, arjavam, so straightforward that you can disclose the truth even to an enemy. Accepting a spiritual master is essential. Saucham, cleanliness, which will come again in 14th and 17th chapter, is of two types. External is cleaning the body by bathing, and internal is by chanting Hare Krishna. Steadiness, that will be determined, stharyam, to make progress in spiritual life. Self-control means that I meet the demands of the body, I meet the needs of the body, not the wants. There's a difference between needs and wants. So I meet the needs so that I can keep the body together, the soul and body together, but I don't need the wants. The renunciation of sense objects, not to cater unnecessary demands. The same thing, that I'm gratified to keep body fit for devotional service. Absence of false ego, reject that I'm the body, mine, and accept that I'm Krishna's servant. Perception of evil one should talk about this regularly. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. Janma is birth, Mrityu is death, Jara is old age, Vyadhi is disease. We have to talk about it regularly. People generally tend to avoid those topics, but Prabhupada said talk about it, because that only will lead to firm attachment to Krishna's service if we are convinced. And detachment means one should be ready to sacrifice everything for Krishna, not like that I want Krishna to fulfill my bucket list, but I will not do anything for Krishna. Not like that. No entanglement with wife, children, family, etc. If the family life is not conducive for Krishna consciousness, there is a verdict in the Shastras to leave that family. But if the family is conducive to Krishna conscious cultivation of Krishna conscious life, then one should stay in that family. No need to take sannyas. Prabhupada said it. Even-mindedness, not elated in distressed at material gain or loss. Unalloyed devotional service, engaging oneself in 9 processes of bhakti. Okay, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from general mass of people, accepting importance of self-realization, and philosophical search. These are all 20 qualities. If one cultivates them, then one can elevate themselves from pranamaya consciousness to anandamaya consciousness and extricate. Even by living in the body, one can actually become like this. Then, so far, Krishna has answered what? Krishna has answered Kshetra, Kshetragna, Jnanam. Okay, and the process of knowledge. The 8 to 12 verse is called process of knowledge. And now Krishna is going to talk about Prakriti, Purusha, and Genam. Says, I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So Krishna is now basically in this verse is explaining the 2 knowers. What are the 2 knowers of the body? Kshetragna. What are the 2 knowers? Anyone remembers?
Soul and super soul.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
soul
Soul
and
and
super
super soul.
soul.
Soul and super soul. Now he is describing the qualities of the soul and super soul. So verse number 13, Krishna is describing the quality of the soul. It says, Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me. So the word Brahman has many meanings. And it is explained in the beginning of 8th chapter. If you read, I think it's 8.1 itself, the first verse of 8th chapter, purport. Brahman means the Brahma Jyoti. Brahman also means Atma. And Brahman also means the material nature. The 3 meanings given. Here, Brahman means soul or Atma. So, Sarvendriya Gunabhasham, Sarvendriya Vivarjitam, Asaktam Sarva Brikshaiva, Nirguna Bhoktarcha. The super soul is the original source of all senses. So now first he described Brahman, which is the first knower or soul of or the Kshetragna of a body, which is subordinate to Krishna, and it is beginningless. Okay, now he's explaining the second knower, which is the super soul. That super soul is the origin of all the senses, but he's without senses, right? Nirguna Guna Bhoktarcha, Sarvendriya Vivarjitam. Sarvendriya Gunabhasham. He is the source of all the Indriyas, Sarvendriya Vivarjitam, but he is Vivarjit or devoid of all the senses. Asaktam Sarva Brikshaiva. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. Nirguna Guna Bhoktarcha. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is a master of all the modes of material nature. So, how do we understand this? We understand this Krishna is the source of our senses, but he's without senses. Means that Krishna does not have material senses. Our senses are material. They are subjected to the domain of time, place, and person, but Krishna's senses are not material. Krishna's senses are spiritual. He is unattached, although he's the maintainer of all living beings. We have studied this many times, that Krishna is the origin of all the material modes of nature, mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. He's a controller, but he doesn't come under the influence of those modes of material nature. And the example given was, Prabhupada explained, a king going in the prison doesn't become subjected to the laws of the prison house like other prisoners do. So Krishna is maintaining us, but he does not come under the control of the material nature. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he's the master. Okay, so that is the second knower. The supreme truth exists both internally and externally, in the moving and non-moving. He's beyond the power of material senses to see or to know, although far, far away, he's also very near to all. This is more quality of the super soul, that he's inside, but he's also outside. Right? Antar Bahir Avasthitam. Queen Kunti prays to Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 8th chapter. She prays, Krishna, Antar Bahir Avasthitam. You are inside and you're also outside, and you're everywhere, situated. This is King Parikshit in the womb of his mother. When Ashwathama released the nuclear weapon, his mother prayed to Krishna to save her baby. So Krishna entered the womb, right? Even though Krishna was already there in the heart, but he entered the womb and he saved Krishna from the nuclear weapon released by Ashwathama. So Parikshit Maharaj saw him inside the womb, outside of his body. He saw. That's why his name is Parikshit, always inquiring. Are you the person that I saw inside my mother's womb? Are you the one? Are you the one? Are you the one? Like that. Okay, so he's inside, but he's also outside. He's in the moving and he's also in the non-moving. So it's not that Krishna is situated only in the human being, but he's not there in the plants. He's there. But we cannot see him with these eyes. And we cannot even perceive him with these senses. He's very far away in Golok Vrindavan, but he's also near to me inside my own heart. These are the qualities of the super soul. These things are called as apparent contradictions. Apparently, it appears contradictory that how can somebody be inside and outside? For example, I am sitting in this place of my house. So am I sitting anywhere else at the same time? I'm sitting in this chair. Am I, or you are sitting in one place, but are you sitting at the same time at some other place also?
No,
Yes.
no, Mataji.
So you're only at one place, right? But Krishna is present everywhere at the same time, inside, outside, everywhere. This is called apparent contradiction. And this potency of Krishna is called achintya. Achintya means inconceivable. We cannot conceive. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He's beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. His knowledge He is the object of knowledge and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. This is super soul. So Krishna is the object of light, but he's beyond the darkness. Okay, and Krishna is the knowledge. Krishna is the goal of knowledge, and Krishna is the object of knowledge. Everything is Krishna. If we literally go. Thus, the field of activity, the body, knowledge, which is jnana, and the knowable, which is the kshetragna, have been described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and attain to my nature. A non-devotee will never be able to understand what is kshetra, what is kshetragna, and what is jnana, even though they may try. And why they will not be able to understand? Because they have no faith on the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so far what we discussed, object of knowledge, Gainam, super soul, and soul. Now Krishna describes the Prakriti. Material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and modes of matter are products of material nature. This is so nice. So Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti is material nature. Here Purusha refers to living entity. The literal meaning of the word Purusha is the enjoyer. The literal meaning is not the male or a female. It means enjoyer. That's the literal meaning. So in that way, both male and female are Purusha because they're trying to enjoy. Both have the tendency. Okay, but then the thing is that the Supreme Purusha is Krishna, because the only enjoyer, the literal enjoyer, is only Krishna. He says that in 5th chapter, 29th verse. And I'm the only Bhuktaram Ragnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. I'm the only enjoyer. Anyhow, here when Arjuna asked the question of Prakriti and Purusha, Prakriti is material nature and Purusha refers to the living entity. And they both have the same nature. What is the nature? That we both are beginningless. You cannot trace out that, I was created at this time and the nature was created at this time. No. It's beginningless. No factor. Just Krishna saying. And their transformations and modes of matter are products of material nature. So if I am beginningless, the question arises, then why am I transmigrating from one body to another body and going through birth, death, old age, and disease, which appears to be time-bound? Right? My birth, my death, my old age, and my disease appears to be time-bound. My life appears to be time-bound. Every year, they celebrate the birthday, but whose birthday is it if Krishna is saying that I'm beginningless? Whose day, what day of birth is it? So Krishna explains that why is the soul transmigrating. It's a very detailed verse. Transformation means I'm transforming from one body to another body under the influence of the modes of nature. Okay, and this is given to me by the material nature. The body is given to me by the material nature under the influence of mode, whatever I am in. I will explain. This is coming again. The next two verses explain this very nicely. So, karya karana krititva hetu prakritir uchyate purusha sukha dukhanam bhoktritvitta hetu uchyate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. This is the answer to a very commonly asked question, that why bad things happen to good people. When we go out to preach Krishna consciousness, I also used to ask this question at one point to Tamanishta Prabhu, why bad things happen to good people? Well, for what is bad and what is good anyway, right? So this is the answer. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects. So basically, nature is giving me the body, whatever body but I am responsible. I am responsible as a Purusha or as a living entity for my own suffering and enjoyment in this world. So I am responsible. How? What is the example? This is the example from 5th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. That this person, let's say in their lifespan as a human being, they have a choice that what do I want to eat? What do I want to drink? This person in their life are eating and drinking anything and everything. Okay, no discrimination, because that's the life is for enjoyment. So they are enjoying in this way. The super soul is observing that this particular living entity wants to enjoy the material nature in this way, that wants to eat everything or anything or everything and drink anything or everything. Then when they die, then they're given the body of a hog because that's what they wanted to enjoy. and eating anything or everything, or drinking anything or everything. So the hog or the pig's body is suitable for this kind of an enjoyment. So under the mode of ignorance, I get this body. But is Krishna responsible for it? Krishna is not responsible. I chose to do this in my life, so I get it. Okay. So whatever suffering or enjoyment we are going through, or in other words, the karmic reaction, Krishna is not responsible, even a tiny bit. Then what is Krishna's role? Krishna's role is going to be explained in a couple of verses down the lane. So Purusha Prakriti Sthohi Bhukte Prakriti Jan Gunan Karanam Guna Sangasya Shad Ashad Yoni Janmashu. The living entity in the material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among species. Okay, so we are choosing to associate in the human form of life. Animals have no choice. Animals does not commit any sin because they don't have any choice. You cannot tell a tiger to eat a fruit because it is under the mode of ignorance, thick ignorance, and that's what it does. And it is in the path of transmigration naturally. But when we come to the human form of life, we have a choice. I can choose whether I want to live in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, which the life in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance will be described in 14th chapter, which is tomorrow. But just understand at this time that I can choose whether I want to live a saintly life, a pious life, or a life full of greediness and passion, or a life full of ignorance where sleep is very prominent or laziness is very prominent. Okay, then, and when I choose something, when I make a choice, then I may take accountability of whatever good or evil comes with it. Okay. So this is Krishna's position. Is Krishna responsible for my suffering or for my enjoyment? No, this is Krishna's position. Upadrishta anumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwaraha paramatmaiti cha api yukto dehi asmin purusha paraha. Yet in this body, there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as an overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. Krishna is Upadrishta, oversees my choices, what I'm making, and Anumanta, and allows me to make the choice. I cannot make any choice without Krishna's sanction, cannot, completely controlled. Krishna doesn't sanction, then there are 5 factors which bring about our action, which we'll discuss in 18th chapter. And the final factor, which is the most important factor, is the super soul. If Krishna doesn't sanction, nothing happens. I may have big arrangements, so many nice things, but if Krishna doesn't allow, everything will be dismantled at any moment. If Krishna allows, then it will happen. So Krishna allows us to choose. Krishna does not interfere with our will of making choices. And that's called love. Love doesn't mean that I force myself. But Krishna is patiently waiting and coming. You know why Super Soul comes with us in this material world? Why Krishna comes with us in this material world? Krishna has no reason to come to this world in the form of Paramatma with us. Other than, but you know what the reason is? The reason is this. If let's say that there is a small child in your house. Okay, now that child has to go out. Will you leave that child to go alone on the road? Will you leave that child to go
No,
alone
Mataji.
on the road?
No, Mataji.
Mataji.
Somebody will go with the child to supervise the child's movement, right? Because as an adult, we know that the child has a high chance of being hurt, right? Or accident. So we throw this tantrum to Krishna that I want to go away from you, Krishna. I just want to go away. And Krishna knows that we cannot live without him. So he comes with us, each one of us. And then we look for that affection, that appreciation, that acceptance from outside of us. Here, there, everywhere we look, and then we get frustrated. But we never look inside of ourselves. Unless and until we look within ourselves and find Krishna there, we will go and get another material body, another material situation. I'm sorry, it's 2 minutes above the time, but I will take maybe 5 or 10 minutes more. I'm sorry. my computer gave me problem this time to log in. So one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, which is Prakriti, living entity, which is Purusha, and interaction of the modes of nature, is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present situation or position. So Krishna knows that this science of the Kshetra, Kshetragna, Jnanam, Prakriti, Purusha is a little bit difficult, but he's giving this is called Shruti Phala, the benefit of hearing about it and understanding. Okay, you understand this philosophy will get liberation. That super soul is perceived by some through meditation, by some through cultivation of knowledge, and others through working without fruitive desire. Okay, so there are different processes. So some people are trying to do the self-realization by meditation, but this process was recommended in Satya Yuga, where people were living for 1 lakh years, or by cultivation of knowledge, like just reading. But then the best way is to work for Krishna. Just work for Krishna. Get out and work that. Okay, or for example, in our own house, we cook every day. So rather than cooking for sense gratification, have the consciousness that I'm cooking for Krishna. Krishna is going to enjoy, and when Krishna will enjoy, then we will get the result of prasadam. That's working for Krishna. When you go to do grocery to buy fruits and vegetables, think that your deity in the house is going to be relishing whatever you're going to make out of it, or will enjoy, rather than thinking of ourselves or someone else enjoying it. Think that's working for Krishna. Simple. And again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. So he said, no, some people are trying to understand the super self by cultivation of knowledge. Some are trying to understand by meditation. Some are trying to understand by working. But then there are some people who accidentally hears about Krishna from someone, from a bona fide source. Because of their tendency to hear from authority, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Because they heard it from proper source, even though they were not coming to hear for that person's purpose, but they heard and then they became attracted. They also transcend. So Krishna wants everyone, no matter what reason. I was listening to Prabhupada yesterday. He was saying, what was he saying? Yena kena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayet. Somehow or other, whatever, somehow or other become attached to Krishna. Focus your mind on Krishna. Okay, in the last part of the chapter, Krishna explains Prakriti, Purusha and their union, which is Gyanam. We studied the Prakriti and we studied the Purusha. Prakriti is material nature. Purusha is the living entity which is trying to enjoy the material nature. And Prakriti and Purusha both are beginningless. And then we understood the interaction. The interaction is that Prakriti is bringing forth the modes of nature, is bringing forth different kinds of bodies. And I am making a choice. What mode am I going to associate with? And then I get the body under the supervision and permission of Krishna. What is Krishna's position? He is a Upadishta and Anumanta. Now, what is Gyanam? Gyanam means what is the goal of knowledge. O chief of Bharatas, whatever you see in existence, both moving and unmoving, is only the combination of the field of activities and the knower of field. That's it. We become so proud of knowing this, knowing that. But Krishna says, whatever you're seeing, is just a combination of Kshetra and Kshetragna. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu tishthanam parameshwaram vinashyatva avinashyantam ya pashyati sapashyati. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul is ever destroyed, actually sees. Ya pashyati sa pashyati. One who sees this and not sees that, oh, I'm going to die. Oh, I'm the mind. No. It says I'm Krishna's, and Krishna is present with me and in you and in that particular fellow and in this particular animal. That person actually sees. Now think for a moment. Just think for a moment. Okay, meditate. If the whole world becomes like this, that I see, I respect you for you belong to Krishna, and you respect me because I also belong to Krishna. And in that relationship with Krishna, we make our relationship with Krishna in the center. Will there be a need for nuclear bombs and armies and so many things that are going on? Will there
No,
be a
Mataji.
need
No,
for a world
Mataji.
like
No,
this? There
no,
will
Mataji.
not be any need. So the real problem in the world, we talk about so many problems, but the real problem in the world is lack of Krishna consciousness. If we can bring this, that is why we need some sincere people who can understand this knowledge of Krishna, by Krishna, and propagate this, talk about it. Okay, there's a real need. One who sees a super soul in every living being and equal everywhere does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches a transcendental destination. I really like this verse. I meditate on this every day. That, you see, we have a choice. Mind has a choice whether I want to degrade. Degrade means that I associate with the lower modes, mode of passion and mode of ignorance, or whether I want to upgrade myself or mode of goodness. So you see, degrade. You see a choice. So if your goal, if the final goal of someone's life is to go back to Krishna, then we choose wisely. We don't degrade. We don't become succumbed by so many things happening in the lower modes of nature. Okay, so that person is there but is not there because I want to go to Krishna. One who can see that all activities are performed by body which is created of material nature and sees that self does nothing, actually sees. So nice, right? The last 3 verses are describing the vision of a Uttamadhikari or a Brahmabhuta, Prasannatma. The Atma, which is situated in the self, knows that automatically the body is functioning. Like, for example, you turn on your TV and you put a channel on, and then there's a show coming. So it appears that everything is automatic, right? Everything appears so automatic in it, but everything was programmed. You're not doing anything, right? Everything was programmed. So in the similar manner, our body is programmed to do everything. As soon as the soul enters the body, it's automatically programmed to go through the 6 changes. And the soul is not doing it. Soul is not doing it. The self does nothing. Soul's empowerment is doing it. Energy of the soul is doing it, but not the soul. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. This is so nice. So you see, the sky is not mixing with anything. Let's say that you're sitting in a park, okay, and then a very nice fragrance of roses crossed by the nose. So we know that this particular air which is passing through my nose just went across the very nice rose garden. Correct or not? That's where it collected the fragrance from. Right or wrong?
Yes, Mataji.
You can deduct or understand the knowledge that way, right? But then what happens after traveling some distance? The air loses that fragrance because the fragrance never really mixes or becomes one with the air. It is there, but at the same time, it is separate. Like that, soul is sitting in the body. Okay, the soul is sitting in my body, but the soul doesn't mix with the muscle of the heart or the blood or bones or nerves. No. For example, another example given is driving a car. Let's say the driver enters the car and drives the car around, but does the driver become one with the car? Does the driver become one with the steering wheel or one with the brake?
No,
or
Mataji.
one with
No,
the
Mataji.
rear view mirror? Does it happen?
No, Mataji.
No.
So thank you. So at the end, the driver drives the car everywhere using the car, but at the end, it comes out of the car. Similarly, the soul enters the body, uses this body to go do this, and at the end leaves the body. Okay, does not mix, does not become one. O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity one within the body illuminates the entire body by consciousness. Okay, so just one soul illuminates the whole body. One who knowingly sees this difference between the body and the owner of the body can understand the process of liberation from this bondage, also attains to the supreme goal. So knowingly, Krishna wants us to know this. Okay, so this is the chapter. Arjuna asks 6 questions. Krishna, what is Prakriti? What is Purusha? What is Gyanam? What is Jnanam? What is Kshetra? What is Kshetragna? And Krishna answers the questions one by one. So Arjun's 6th question. Etad Veditam Ichhami. This is my desire. I want to know this in the first verse. Krishna describes Kshetra, Kshetragna, and Gyan from verse 2 to 7. Kshetragnam cha api mam vidhi. So there are two knowers, soul and super soul. Kshetra is the body, and one who knows the body is the Kshetragna. And Gyan is to know this relationship between Kshetra and Kshetragna. Process of acquiring knowledge, 8 to 12 verse, where 20 qualities were described, starting with Amanvitam, Maicha Ananya Yogena. Genam, object of knowledge. Object of knowledge is to know the super soul, which is described in verse 13 to 19, where Krishna describes the qualities of Brahman, where the Brahman in 13th verse was referring to the soul, which is beginningless and subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is eternal. And then the rest of the verses were used. Krishna described the properties of super soul. Sarvata Pani Padam Tat. And Prakriti, Purusha and union. Prakriti is material nature. Purusha over here refers to the living entity and how they are interacting with each other. What is Prakriti bringing forth and what is Purusha doing to interact with Prakriti, even though they both are also beginningless, even though they both also have no time factor acting constitutionally, but they appear to be bound by time now. So how is, and we are responsible for our sufferings and our enjoyments. We have to take responsibility. If we don't take responsibility, then we put it on someone else's shoulder, right? And then we never actually become wise. So responsibility brings forth wiseness. So verse 20 to 26, Karanam Gunasangasya. Vision of knowledge, knowingly see this, knowingly know this is what is happening. From verse 27 to 35, Kshetra Kshetragnur evam antaram jnana chakshushaha. Knowingly know what is Kshetra, what is Kshetragna, what is Jnanam, what is Prakriti, what is Purusha, and what is the goal of knowledge. Okay, so this, and thank you so much for staying. If anyone has to leave, please feel